Okay guys, I hope we're back. Things were a bit mental there. Things went a bit crazy. We lost power, or it basically flicked off and on, and it basically killed everything barring my computer. It killed the internet, etc, etc. And yeah, that's great. So basically, we want the speed here. Right? And I'm not 100% sure if this is going to work. Right, but we have our hands. And it kind of does. Right? Kind of does. Even though obviously the blend space. No. The animation stuff works fine. It's just I haven't got the animations yet. Right? But I'm putting in some of the code to make it work. Right? So once we get the final things, then I just need to plug them in and it'll all be great and fantastic and stuff. Right? So like we've got our blend space. And really what I should do is we should bring this down a bit. Right, now if we go at full speed, we should get actual clapping. You see? So all I need to do is get the correct animations for when I'm running, and then it's going to do the right thing. Right? So that is kind of working. So that is all good. Now if I pull this down a bit, right, let's say 300, then we should get full clap. In theory. Right, so there you go. We get the full clap. And then when we stop, we go back to normal, back to normal, back to normal. So all I need is the right positions and animations for these things and it's going to work. Right? But as you can see, that's cool. And then the point is that we've put the code in, right, to get our, we've put the code in to do our footsteps, our dynamic footsteps, right? And all we need is the pawn and the footstep volume multiplier. Right, now this footstep multiplier is basically coming from the it's going to come from the game instance. So when I set this up, when I create the Pawn Chronicles, right, he's going to have that animation. So basically what we're going to do, right, is we're going to look for Pawn Chronicles, right, and in the event graph, when we begin play, what we're going to do is we're going to add a variable and we're going to call it anim instance, right, and in actual fact anim, it's going to be one of them, right? So this is the one with it. So we say we want to get I lost power. The power flicked on and off. And that's not going to allow it. I'm going to have to cast to arms, which is fine. Don't mind doing that. Yes, somebody answer your question. Set up your other two collision boxes, spheres, whatever they are, right? And then switch them off and on depending on the situation or the condition of the other one, right? I don't know what use case that you're trying to do here. If it's like a closer condition or a further away condition or whatever, you would have to really explain what you're trying to do. But basically what you want to do is switch the overlap on and off depending on what's overlapped at that point. Right, so basically if it's two inner ones that are activated by an outer one, you can set them to collision nothing. Right, you just basically change the profile of the collision boxes to no collision, and then when the first collision box is collided with, then you can basically change the profiles back to whatever you want to collide with. There's multiple ways of doing this, doing what you're talking about, but I'd need to know exactly what you're talking about to answer you better. Right, so volume, oh, we need to set this variable, right? So in our animation instance, we need to set a variable called foot step volume. Okay, and that is going to be Right, well you set the profile. You set the collision profile to no collision until the person steps on the first one. So you'll have on begin overlap, then you'll set the profile of your other boxes to then be, you know, collide with all or pawn only or whatever it is. Now, whatever you see in the box that you drop down for the collision, that is the exact name that you tell it, including lack of spaces, right? So no collision doesn't have any spaces, there's no spaces. So you type in exactly what it says in the drop down box when you're setting the profile name. That's one way of doing it. Okay. Now the other thing we can do here is we can say pawn, right? And that is going to be Pawn Chronicles. And then we can pass this in as well. So we can now basically just do that, and there we go. We're ready to rock and roll. Once we've got our notifies, we just plug this straight in and it will work, right? But there's two things we need to do first. And that is in our Pawn Chronicles, we need to set up our animation instance, and we say footstep. We set the footstep volume, right? And it's going to come from our game instance. And it's going to be our audio settings, right? And we break this, and then basically what we do is we multiply that, right? So float times float by the fx, and that goes in there, right? And that gives us our volume multiplier. And then finally we set our pawn. Okay, so what we can do here is we can drag this down a bit, then we can say pawn, set the pawn, and we just say self, plug that in there. Okay, I'll try plugging it in the next time. And that's us got our pawn. Okay, so now we don't actually need to try and get pawn. Okay, we can delete that, we can drag our pawn in, and then we just do that and do that. Okay, and now we only ever set our pawn up once, so we're not trying to get a pawn all the time. Yeah, so somebody have a look at this, right? In here, okay, we've got, let's say, this gun, right? And it's got a mesh, it's got clothing, it's got physics, it's got this collision, right? So you'll notice at the moment it's no collision, okay? Right? So what you can do is you can set the profile, right? You can say set collision profile name. Okay? And in here you can say no collision. Okay? And that is going to set it to 0 collision. Okay? But if you look at the collisions, you can set it to overlap all, right? But all you need to do is, like, say I wanted block all dynamic or overlap all. Let's say it was just overlap all, right? All I need to do is do the same thing plug this in here and then copy that name, right, from the drop down. So I can just say overlap all. Okay? And then if you unoverlap the first box, then just change it back to no collision. Right? When the first box is collided with, you change it to overlap all or whatever it is the type of collision you want, right? And then when they leave the unoverlap, then you just set it back to no collision. Okay? And that's how you do it. Or it's at least one way of doing it. There's other ways of doing it, right? But you just need to remember to copy exactly what is in this. So it's block all dynamic with capital B, capital A, capital D. Notice that none of them have spaces, right? So you don't put any spaces in. And each word is capitalized, right? So if I wanted overlap only pawn, I would do the same thing again, right? But I would say overlap only pawn, right? And there you go. That's how you can change. That's one way of doing it. Pretty decent way of doing it. By changing the profile of the collision for that object. Okay. And that'll work fine. I have done it like that before. So now we just need to check that our stuff still works. And there you go. Right? Now we're not using the try get pawn, we're using the actual pawn. Right? And we're setting it up once. No, not 4 blueprints. All you need in the first one is when it begins overlap, change the profile of your other collision boxes or collision capsules or collision spheres, right? Have them by default saying no collision, right? Except for the one that you want it to be able to collide with. When they overlap that collide, then change the collision profile of your other two, right, to collide with what you want it to collide with. right? When they leave your initial collision box, switch the profile back to no collision. And that's it. Right, if you're not in the Discord already, join the Discord, and if you need more help, then let me know. Right? But that's the way to do it. So our animation is working nicely. I'm going to get in touch with my good friend Kent at Odium Studios, and we shall have a look at making this work. Then we can add in the footprints, and that's one of the major parts of what was missing will be added to our game. And on that, guys, if you've enjoyed the stream, hit like and subscribe. I'll be back at 8 PM Central as usual. We'll have a look at something else, and check out the description for links to various things like my Discord and ways to support the channel through Patreon. Yeah, show me what you mean, somebody in Discord. And my previous game, which is Tower Defense game, and even adding that just to your wish list, guys. Doesn't cost you anything, and it helps out in the Steam algorithm. I would very much appreciate it, and I shall see you all later. Thanks for watching, guys, and bye bye for now.